So today, we end our summer series by answering the question, how do you build healthy and godly relationships? Did I get the button right? Yes, I did. All right. So today's talk is the friend we long for, becoming what we needed all along. Now, every meaningful relationship has a friendship component to it. Marriage thrives when there is friendship. Families feel whole when there's friendship. Even coworkers and church family, it's this friendship piece that makes the relationships healthy and life-giving. And that's why this conversation this morning matters so much. Because every relationship needs the same essentials. And there's something that makes friendships really strong. So Van Gogh, he's known for painting the Starry Night, the self-portrait with the straw hat, and the cafe terrace. This particular painting on the left, this is called Bedroom in Aries. And the painting Aries, thank you. There's actually 3 versions of this painting. The first one was painted with so much color and vibrancy because there was this expectation. He was actually painting this for this future he was envisioning with his friends. He wanted to build this artist colony that would come together and create beautiful art that would surprise the world, that would inspire the world. And he also wanted it because he wanted people who understood him. He wanted connection. He wanted community. And so he was so excited to experience this. And so he painted this piece, and this was inspired by a room he was staying at called the Yellow House in France. And so he paints this, and he's extremely excited, and events happen, and he gets into this argument, this huge disagreement with one of his closest friends. And it destroys this artist colony that he was anticipating and trying to build. And his future just crumbles. And he falls into this very deep depression. And he snaps. And if you know, he's famous for cutting off his ear because of this extreme distress he was feeling. And after this, he had this breakdown. And while he was recovering, he goes back to this painting. And he does 2 other versions of this. And this version of the painting is less colorful, less vibrant. And he keeps all the elements the same, but the colors and the tone and the angles start to change. And this painting for him, although it initially symbolized hope and community and connection, for him started to show the isolation that he was feeling internally. And so you see a bed with 2 chairs, and this idea of 2 chairs is for community, that more people, more than one person would be in this room, space, talking, dreaming, creating, but the space is empty. It is still. And so it's a reflection of his inner world, the loneliness he was carrying. So Van Gogh tried to paint away his loneliness. He tried to create a space that felt welcoming. But the emptiness in that room is still the emptiness that many of us, we feel today. We're surrounded by people, yet we're starved for connection. Did you know that a recent study found that 1/3 of millennials have no close friends? Another study surveyed 10,000 people and revealed that 70% said that they feel lonely and no one understands them. This is an epidemic. Van Gogh's loneliness feels distant and maybe feels like we can't connect because of some of the extreme actions he took, but isn't it true for us too? Like if we're honest and we think about some of our relationships, there's a distance. Sometimes we can feel that gap. For some of us, we know the ache of loneliness. Others are stuck in friendships that drain them, where they walk away feeling worse, no better. where they feel left leaving uninspired, hopeless, pessimistic, energy vampires. And then there are people who actually give us life when we step away from that moment, where we feel lighter, we feel inspired, we feel hopeful, and sometimes we may even feel closer to God. So why? Why all these stats? Why these extremes? The answer is because we're created for connection. Loneliness isn't just a social problem. It's truly a spiritual one. And if we look at our world today, loneliness is a problem. We have a very big spiritual issue in the world today. But the good news is that Scripture didn't leave us guessing. It shows us how to build and cultivate the kind of healthy relationships that our souls hunger for. So what I'm going to do is I do need a volunteer. The volunteer is for someone to just write down the answers I'm about to get for this question. So can I have someone who doesn't mind writing? Oh, thank you. I'm coming your way. Don't worry. One second. Flat tire, yeah. All right. So I'm going to ask the question, what makes a good friend? And I'm going to ask for what to you, what makes a good friend? And you can call it out, and then our good friend over there is going to write it down for us. So the question is, what makes a good friend? Honesty. Support. Trust.
Empathy.
Loyal, empathy. Thank you. Companionship. Are we going too fast? Are we good? You said good listening? All right, 2 more. Yes. Understanding. 1 more. Compassionate. So we've got quite a list of what makes a good friend, and there's a lot. So we're going to take a look at 3 essential things that Scripture tells us about building and cultivating healthy relationships. So the first essential piece to relationships, and we're going to come back to the list because all of you are right, but is presence. Now, have you ever been in the same room with someone who is a million miles away? That you're there with them and you feel like you can be in 2 completely separate states, countries, a galaxy away. Or have you ever found yourself? Now, I have found myself in this particular situation. Have you ever found yourself having a conversation with someone, and then all of a sudden, as they're talking to you, you start thinking about, what am I going to have for lunch today? Or you're distracted by something that's happened around you, or you ended up listening to the conversation next to you and not to the person in front of you. And then as they're talking, you're like, oh my gosh, wait, I completely forgot what they're telling me. And so you're trying to remember what they're telling you, but in real time, you're missing everything that they're saying at that moment. Who's been there? Yeah, I've been there more times than I'd like to admit. But, and now you're further in this like conversational hole. But we can be present and not be present. We've all experienced this. And so did Martha when Jesus came to her house. So, oh man. All right. Luke 10:38-40 says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. And Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." See, Martha was in the same space as Jesus, but they were so far away from one another. She was distracted with the need tos, the must dos, and these were all good things. See, like Jesus had saved her brother, and so she was honoring him, but she was so busy serving and being and helping that she wasn't present. And then you have Mary on the other side, who has all these things to do, but instead of doing those things, she fully shows up in that moment with Jesus and the disciples. She sits there and 150% attention is on Jesus. See, it's easy to live distracted, right? It's easy to live distracted and not fully in the moment. We've got our children's sports practice. We have to make dinner. Bring work home with us. We have to figure out how we're going to buy a home in this economy. We have to fix what's broken in our home if we have a home. We have to figure out our finances. The list goes on. There's so much to do that it's so easy to be distracted and not be present in a moment. And it's okay that we think about these things, but if we make it a habit, if it becomes the pattern of our lives of not being present, we lose the gift of being present. And people around us lose the gift of our presence. You know I have to bring a movie into this. Always. So one of my favorite movies of Adam Sandler is Click. Has anyone ever watched the movie Click? One of my all-time favorites. And in this movie, Adam Sandler is a man who is working so hard for his family. I think if I'm not mistaken, he's working multiple jobs. He's trying to be a good husband. He's trying to be a good father, a good friend. He's pulled in every which direction, and he's exhausted. And so one day, this stranger comes to him and offers him a solution. Actually offers him this magical remote control that can pause time or fast forward time. And the idea for this remote is that all the things that he does not want to experience, he can fast forward and just skip it. So he doesn't have to feel the exhaustion of work, or sometimes when you come home and you're with your kids and it's exhausting, it's like there's some times where he can just and be back and kids are sleeping and he can have his him time. And so he's really hesitant to use it at first, but then a situation arises, he remembers that he has it, and he's like, why not? And he does it, and he realized how much he enjoys it. So he's really enjoying the fact that he can skip the parts that are most uncomfortable for him, that are most draining. And so he starts skipping, and over the course of the movie, he realizes that he's missed so many parts of the lives of his loved ones. He realized that all these small moments that were annoying or uncomfortable or just frustrating, that those were the formative moments of the lives of his loved ones. And then he couldn't relate to them. It became this difficult moment where he realized, I messed up. My presence was needed and I wasn't there. My presence was needed in those moments, but I was a million miles away. And so he realized, and he tries to rewind time, but he can't. And he's messing with the buttons. He's so frustrated that the remote breaks. And it doesn't just stop working, it starts forwarding time even faster. And so he's having these moments, and even these moments that are so important to him, they just disappear. By the time he gets to try to appreciate them, they just on to the next one, until he's at his deathbed. And there is so much regret. There is so much pain because of the lack of presence he had in the lives of his loved ones. in his relationships. And so this idea that our attention, our presence is one of the most powerful gifts we can give someone. That is one of the most important things we can ever do in the lives of our loved ones. Presence is essential for relationships. We are built to connect, but this only happens when we are fully present. Presence isn't just showing up in the room, it's showing up with your soul. So this part of the 3 essentials for relationships, the first essential is presence. The second essential is honesty. Someone said honesty here. But yes, the third essential piece for relationships is honesty. See, most of us, we don't struggle with knowing the truth. We struggle saying the truth. There are so many things we kind of know, we acknowledge, but we shy from saying it. We shy from revealing the truth or the things within inside of us. And sometimes it feels safer to keep quiet, to wear a mask, to kind of just not share what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, because we get to save face. Or sometimes we've been hurt, we've been burned far too many times that it's just easier to not share who we are. It's easier not to share what we're struggling with. But real relationships can't survive without honesty. Honesty is a crucial piece within relationships. Can you actually say that you are close with any of the people in your lives that you have not shared who you are? I think about my friendships and the ones that I would say I'm okay with, like, it passing and it's going through its life cycle in friendship are not the ones that I've shared the most with. The ones that I've shared who I am, I want to hold on to them until the very end. See, this idea of honesty is very closely related to vulnerability. Being able to share about who you are and what you're experiencing. See, that's what made David and Jonathan's friendship so powerful. See, in Scripture, before David becomes king, he becomes best friends with King Saul's son, Jonathan. And there are quite a few verses. I'm not going to go through them, but we'll give you little pieces of them. So in 1 Samuel 18, 19, and 20, you have quite a few things. And in chapter 18, verse 1 through 4, Jonathan begins being honest. Like, he's honest with David about who he is. And he does this really, cultural symbol of how much he trusts David. And what he does is he strips away his symbols of power. He gives David his robe, his tunic, his bow, his sword, and his belt. And he entrusts them to David, saying, David, what I'm telling you is I'm going to be fully transparent with who I am with you. Creating this space. Because for honesty to have, you have to create the space of honesty in that relationship. And so he starts off by, I am going to be truly transparent with you. And then in chapter 19, verses 1 through 3, when King Saul became jealous of David's fame, Saul wanted to actually kill David. And so Jonathan, after realizing this, after learning this, he risks honesty. He risks his relationship with his father, and he tells him what his father wants to do. And even though it costs his loyalty to his father, even though it burns a bridge with his father, he's like, I'm willing to do this because, as I told you, you and I are going to be honest. So transparent with who he is, transparent with circumstances. And in chapter 20, their friendship is sealed with a covenant. So Saul was, not only did he want to, he was going to kill David. And so Jonathan tells David and creates this plan, and then David leaves. And so Jonathan is fully honest. And one of the things that I started thinking about was Jonathan was such a good, like almost like a perfect friend to David. And after Jonathan dies, which is shortly right before David becomes king, that is when we actually see David making poor decisions. Like his decisions about how to sometimes lead, what he does, a lot of his decisions get in trouble. And what we see in scripture is that Jonathan, not only was he honest about himself, not only was Jonathan honest about the circumstances, he also gave David real feedback in his life. Like when David was acting a fool, Jonathan was like, "You're acting a fool. Like you need to," he would push back. That this concept in scripture, right? Iron sharpens iron. He pushed back on David saying, "Are you sure about this? Like, are you sure?" He made sure that David was not living a life in fear, in the wrong, but having that information and knowing that when he made a wrong decision, he made a wrong decision. Because after Jonathan passed, there was no one else to fill that void. The prophets tried to do that, and they could not support David in that way. He still made those decisions. And so this idea of honesty and friendship is crucial. See, we all need friends who are willing to tell the truth about who they are, about the circumstances, and to tell us the truth, to give us that feedback, strong enough to do that. See, when Jonathan was alive, David had someone who could keep an eye on him. He had someone who was vulnerable, someone who would iron sharpens iron. And in this space, right, vulnerability is a posture. And that's how Jonathan showed up. He was vulnerable. And he put honesty into practice. And in that, trust was the fruit. Trust became what was in their relationship. And it's not a coincidence, right? That when we don't have spaces of honesty, our character drifts. And that's true in our marriages. That's true in our relationships with our friends, but especially in our marriages. When we can't be honest with one another, our character drifts. Things start to happen. In our relationships, friendships, our family relationships, our family dynamics, it is crucial for that. So for the three essentials, we've got presence, we've got honesty, and for this third part, it's a little bit more open-ended. It's a little more of a framework in friendship than it is actually a point. It's this idea of be the friend you need. So there are many ways to be a friend. And you truly can't boil it down to 3 things, 4 things, 5 things. Friendship, relationships, marriage. There's so many elements. Now, I asked for a volunteer for that list. Can I get that? So be the friend you need. Be the friend your relationship needs. And that could be honesty, support, trust, loyalty, empathy, compassion, good listening, understanding, kindness, mercy, right? Grace, having this place where forgiveness, a soundboard, someone who can act as a shelter. There are so many ways to be a friend. There are so many ways to show up in your relationships. But it does start inward, right? It's this idea of become the kind of friend you wish you had. But it moves into something more. Luke 6:31. Do to others as you would have them done to you. It's the golden rule. Treat others as you would want to be treated. In relationships, this is so important. I think we sometimes treat them how we want to be treated. And although that's true, it's treat them how we would want to be treated. And so it's this this way that we want to be treated in a way that's loving and that's understanding of us. And we need to treat others in a way that is loving and understanding of them. So do to others, you would have them done to you. And this commandment's in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And what's interesting that this is never a description for anyone except for Jonathan. Jonathan in 1 Samuel is described, this is what it's used to describe him, because he, Jonathan, loved David as he loved himself. And they describe Jonathan this way 3 times. And this is the only time in Scripture that it's not a commandment. And I have to because I love how the Bible connects to each other, I just have to believe that it's highlighting. Anytime something's highlighted more than 3 times, or 3 times or more, the Bible's trying to show something, and it's saying, there's something about Jonathan. There's something about how Jonathan is treating his relationships that we have to see. Be the friend you wish you had. And that's exactly what Ruth did for Naomi. See, in the book of Ruth, Naomi had lost everything. She lost her husband, she lost her sons, and she told Ruth to go back to her family. Go back where you came from. Leave me alone. And she was in a lot of pain. To lose your family, to lose your loved ones, there's loneliness and pain. But Ruth said, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. In the worst and darkest moments of Naomi's life, Ruth chose to be the kind of friend Naomi desperately needed. And this morning, that's the invitation for us, is the point is called, be the friend you need. But what Jesus is really showing us is that to do that, you've also got to be the friend they need. This means asking, listening, and loving them the way you'd want to be loved. The 3 essentials for relationships: presence, honesty, and this framework about being the friend you need. There are so many more, but I believe these are really important. And so this morning, as we kind of wrap up, this is a challenge to you. This week, this is a challenge. And maybe you can share next Sunday how you accepted this challenge, how you decided to tackle one of these. But be present today with someone undistracted. Be with someone without your phone. Be with someone fully present, making sure you are so close to them. Honesty. Be honest with a friend. Be honest with your partner and share something real about where you are today, about the struggle, about what you're having. And then third, be the friend you need. Ask a friend, what do you need? And be that. Because I'll tell you, I am not a great friend half the time. And I recognize that. I recognize that this talk was probably not... I struggled with this talk. I struggled writing it, especially the last couple of months. It's been really tough, and I feel like I've isolated myself a little. So this talk was not something I wanted to do, but I did have an amazing weekend last weekend with friends, and it inspired me. It kind of moved me in a way that I felt like I really needed. And I recognized that I could show up into my relationships a little better. I can be the person like I was created to be in those moments. I could be a little bit more present. I know for sure I could be a little more honest about who I am. And there are people in my life, there are people in my sphere of influence that could really use someone in their life. And because they're in my life, I think that there's a meaning for that, because God put me in their orbit and them in my orbit, that I could step in. I can be a friend. So recognizing that, I'm going to try to do at least one of them this week. But my challenge to you is to do at least one, because we were not created to be alone. We were not created to be isolated. And we do have at least one person in our life who could really benefit from a relationship, from a friendship.